Rem heard the knocking a second time and decided it must be a neighbor. It was strange that someone would come at this hour. Rem approached the door and looked for the people. Nothing. Rem opened the door and stepped outside, looking around and saw nothing. Rem stepped back inside, looking over her shoulder once more before closing the door behind her. Walking to the kitchen, Rem began to think of Subaru. Was Subaru really who he said he was? A lost boy away from home? Rem grabbed a cup from one of the cabinets. While Rem needed to think of how to handle Subaru, there were other things to attend to. Rem wanted to visit the Roswell mansion, or what was left of it. Rem didn't know if she could handle it, but Rem knew that in order for her to say her final goodbyes to her big sister, she had to see it for herself. Rem filled up the cup with water. She was so lost in her thoughts, she didn't notice when the water rose over the rim and spilled under her hand. Rem quickly sealed the faucet. Rem put the cup down onto the table and turned to wipe her hand on a towel. Suddenly, Rem felt something hard and rounded under her foot. Shifting her foot, Rem saw the golden necklace Subaru had given her just an hour ago. Picking it up, Rem reread the words. "To my fanatical little demon, every day I live is a day I want to be with you. Love, Subaru." Rem clutched the necklace to her heart and started to choke up. She wanted the words in the necklace to be true. Rem wanted Subaru to love her as much as she loved him. Why couldn't he just come up to her and tell her that he loved her with everything he had? Rem put her back to the wall at a corner of the kitchen. Sliding down slowly to the floor, Rem began to see Subaru in her head, giving her bits of his food, taking pictures of her, giving her flowers and gifts, kissing her, and complying with her wishes. Rem could only count on one hand how many times Subaru was mean to her, but would need dozens of hands to count just how many times Subaru showed his appreciation for her, his love for her. Perhaps Subaru was the one for her. She could forgive him, but she would never forget what he kept from her. It hurt her inside knowing the last time she saw Big Sister was when she left to take care of Subaru. She didn't even get to say a proper goodbye. She was so worried about Subaru. She wanted to talk to him now. Rem wanted to know what he saw in her, what he planned for the future. She wanted to ask him if he really loved her. One of Rem's first thoughts when they moved in here was to start a family with him someday in the future. It would be them against the world. They would live happily together and forever. They, Subaru and Rem, they did everything together. Moving to Karagi, finding a house, shopping, sleeping, breathing. Everything. The only times they weren't together was when they were at their jobs, but when they were together, Subaru would give her unrelenting love. Subaru made so many sacrifices for Rem. So many Rem wasn't sure if she could ever repay him. Once again, Rem began to have doubts of Subaru being part of the cult. What cult member would risk his life for children he just met? What cult member would run straight into a pack of mob beasts to save her? What person would cherish her forever no matter how crazy she got? Subaru would. Rem went into the fetal position. Her legs were tucked towards her chest, arms wrapped around them, and her head placed between her legs, face down. Tears formed in her eyes. "Subaru, I'm sorry." Rem apologized to a non-existent Subaru, who she believed was out in the night. Rem awoke the next morning, still in the kitchen. Rem had cried till she fell asleep. Getting up, Rem went over to the sink and washed her face. Last night's tears were dried up on her skin, but as Rem washed her face, they were removed. With her head clear, Rem began to plan out her day. Rem called work to inform them she wasn't feeling well and would have to stay home. For a few hours after noon, Rem began to wonder when Subaru would come back. Afterwards, Rem decided now was a good time to call Subaru and ask him to come back. Rem pulled out her media and opened it up. Scrolling through her contacts, she stopped when it got to Subaru's. Was she ready? Rem was ready to hear him out, hear his side of the story, but she wasn't sure if she was ready to see him. Rem was pretty sure that when Subaru showed up, she would look into his eyes and see the eyes of a cult member. She didn't want to think about that anymore. Everything he did, everything he said, every way he acted resembled nothing of the witch's cult. She had to trust him and hope he was genuine. Rem pressed Subaru's contact icon. "This media is no longer available or in service." What? Rem stared at the words in her media. They stayed there for a few seconds before disappearing. Rem pressed the button again. "This media is no longer available or in service." No. Rem thought that this had to be false. The only way for a media to be unresponsive is if its internal content crystal was totally destroyed. What if Subaru ran? Rem was in shock. Walking towards the front door, she pocketed the media. Rem opened the door, but before she walked out, she grabbed the golden necklace from the counter. The necklace reflected a little bit of golden light under her skin as Rem put it on. Examining herself in the mirror, she realized she was wasting time and went out the door, closing it behind her. If Subaru ran, Rem would easily find him. All she had to do was follow the scent of the witch. It was a lightly bitter smell that she easily picked up with her advanced Oni nose. Rem needed to hurry. If Subaru started to run last night, he would have gotten far by now. This means she needs to move fast if she wanted to find him more quickly. Turning to her right, Rem followed the smell south. After a few blocks, the scent started to move across the street. Rem waited until a safe point to cross and proceeded to follow. After running for 5 minutes, Rem came to an open lot area where she recognized as the portable pub's nightly location. She knew this because she came here with Subaru before with Okie during one of their hangouts. The smell of the witch was mixed with the smell of alcohol. Rem felt nauseous. She wasn't a fan of alcohol. She couldn't stand its smell. Rem would often get drunk off the smell alone and Subaru would return home from a night of drinking. Rem wasn't sure herself why she didn't grow more tolerable of the smell, but she never did. The scent of the witch made a U-turn. Maybe Subaru was trying to throw her off. Rem followed the scent for another few minutes until she stopped at where the scent ended. Subaru in Rem's house. The scent was faint. Rem could sense that the smell of the door was at least 8 hours old. She would be able to tell if Subaru would come back when she opened the door. A look of confusion crosses her face. Did Subaru sneak in the house without Rem's knowing? When inside the house, Rem sniffed the air. The scent's old. The age of the witch's smell was as old as the one Rem followed on the way to the pub. Not back. That meant that Subaru had made it to the door and just somehow masked the smell. But when, where? Without the smell, Rem had no way of finding Subaru. Rem leaned on the frame of the front door, a look of betrayal on her face. Subaru was gone. He left Rem. No, I don't believe it. Rem's naive mind tried to think of a solution as to why Subaru's scent ended here, and didn't continue. He must have gotten rid of the smell. Maybe. Whatever possessed my Subaru with the witch was gone by now. Rem began thinking that the real Subaru was possessed by the witch. That was what may have caused the smell. Now that the smell was gone, it meant Subaru was free. Free of the witch's clutches. Again, Rem was putting together pieces that didn't exist. Again, she came up with her own conclusion. One that she wanted to believe because in her mind it made sense and meant that Subaru was clean. Rem grinded her teeth together, clenching her fist. Rem punched a hole into the wall. But why leave then? Subaru obviously came back, but as soon as he was purified, why would he just leave? Did he really not love her? He must have found out that she no longer smelled like the witch if he ran. Rem cried into her arms, leaning on the doorframe. Her sobs sounded throughout every corner of the house. If Subaru had been there, he would have ran to Rem to comfort her. Rem removed her hand from the wall. She defined her Subaru. She had grown to love him too much to let him go. Whether he was in an alliance with the witch or not did not matter to her. Rem's first priority was to find Subaru. How she deals with him then would have to wait. Rem didn't know exactly where Subaru could have gone, but she did have an idea of where to go first. Okie was serving his last customer of the afternoon. He glanced at the time crystal on the eating counter, a light shade of blue. It was about 4 p.m. Okie sat in a chair and rested. Not many people were usually at the plaza at this time, especially on a weekday. Since Okie woke up in his house, he had been trying to remember last night. He was at the portable pub drinking when Subaru called and asked to stay over. At the time, he was slightly wasted, but had enough brain power to realize Subaru's distress and let him stay. After the call, Okie didn't remember anything. All it took was one more beer and Okie was hammered. Red-faced and causing a ruckus, or at least that's how Ken described him. Ken told Okie that he had to get Okie's ID from his pockets to find out his address. When he found out, Ken put the opening of the carriage to the back of Okie's seat. Ken heaved Okie to fall back and into the back of the carriage. From where Ken took the carriage with Okie into Okie's home where Okie woke up and was functional enough to get in his house. Ken told Okie that Subaru had left to talk to his girlfriend. Okie hadn't gotten any calls from Subaru since last night, so he assumed he did make amends with Rem. Whatever Okie's drunken soul said to Subaru must have helped. Yeah, no. Since he had free time, Okie decided to call Subaru, ask him how the talk with Rem went. Okie opened his media and found Subaru's contact. Okie clicked on it and was greeted to a message on the screen. This media is no longer available or in service. Huh? Subaru must have broken it somehow, which seemed impossible since medias are supposed to be able to withstand explosive magic, or so the ad claimed. Okie just brushed it aside as a consequence for Subaru's idiocy. Okie decided he would go to Subaru's house later and ask him about Rem. With nothing to do, Okie decided to clear up shop. His head still hurt from last night and he got enough business today. Okie cleared the register. After counting the money, he put it all in a pouch and pocketed it. After finally finishing putting away his cooking utensils, Okie heard a voice call out to him from above the counter. Okie, it's Rem. Getting up, Okie looked down to see the blue-haired girl looking up at him. She had a crazy look in her eyes that didn't scare Okie, but it didn't help either. You seem distressed, Rem. What's up? Rem walked up to the counter until she had her hands on it. Rem never broke eye contact. The closer she got, the higher she had to raise her head. By the time she reached the counter, Rem's head was raised almost to a 90-degree angle. Where's Subaru? Rem continued to look at Okie, unblinking. He never came home. Rem is worried he doesn't love her anymore. Rem then looked down at her hand on the counter, wishing her worries weren't true. Okie was baffled at the notion that Subaru, the person who seemed to have nothing else on his mind but this girl, would stop loving her so suddenly. He immediately tried to reassure Rem. What? No. Subaru does love you, Rem. He's always talking about you around his friends, a bit too much if you ask me, Okie chuckled. But Rem did not return the smile. Rem looked back up, hopeful that Subaru trusted his friends here enough to tell them his true feelings about Rem. Hearing this made her slightly more happy. Rem put on a more serious face. Subaru's media is not working. Okie was with Subaru last night, right? Yeah, I was with Subaru, but to be honest, Rem, I don't even remember seeing Subaru there. This piqued Rem's interests. I was too drunk to remember anything. Then her expectations fell. All hope was lost. There is someone who may know, though. Rem needed answers and she needed them now. She grabbed Okie by the front of his shirt and, using her immense Oni strength, pulled his face down to her height. Who? Okie. Rem's strength absolutely baffled Okie. How could a girl so small be so strong? Okie was now face to face with Rem. Her face was neutral, but her eyes told him she meant business. Can she? He was with Subaru last night when I was drunk. Rem didn't want to waste her time on someone else who had probably drunk last night too. Was he drunk too? Okie raised his hands to his sides, palms facing Rem. No, goodness, no. He's the owner, he can't drink with his customers. Rem pulled him closer. She could smell the faint scent of booze in his breath. Where is he? I don't know. That answer didn't satisfy Rem. She squeezed Okie's shirt harder. Okie didn't like where this was going. I have his media contact though, that ought to help. From his pocket, Okie pulled out his media. Its circular shape and bronze color shining in the sun like a beacon. Rem finally let go of Okie. Okie gave Rem a look that said, thank you. Okie straightened his shirt with his hand. All the while his media was set to call Ken. After 2 buzzes, Ken picked up. What is it, Okie? Need more beer in that fat belly of yours? Okie looked down at his belly. In his opinion, he wasn't that fat. Okay, maybe just a little. Okie looked at the cruel man in the receiving end of the call. Cut the crap. We need to talk. Ken's monitor figure stroked his chin. Fine. We'll need to talk later though. I'm at City Hall. I'm having an important meeting to settle some things about my bar. No, Ken, this is important. We need to talk now. Subaru's missing. Okie raised his voice. Ken was the last person to see Subaru, so he was an important person to get information from about Subaru's possible whereabouts. Ken looked at Okie with a worried face. All I know is Subaru went home after he talked to me. Rem's saying he never came home. We need you right now. Okie tried to sound threatening but failed to. Ken looked apologetic. I'm sorry, Okie. It's my father's business. I can't leave now. Meet me at the Time Tower at 30. Okie clearly wasn't happy, but nonetheless he agreed. Fine, 30. No more, no less. No wait, yes to less. If you can be there in less than 30, then be there. Fine. A female's voice was heard off screen. Mr. Kuri? Ken looked up and raised a hand. Yes, that's me. Ken looked back down at Okie, said bye and hung up. Before the screen turned dark, Okie saw that Ken's eyes were filled with regret. Okie put the media back in his pocket and looked for Rem. Okie scanned the plaza but failed to see the recognizable blue-haired girl. Just when Okie was going to contact Rem, he heard something coming from the floor in front of the counter. There was a continuous light bumping noise. Okie went around the corner and out of the kitchen to see what it was. Okie found Rem sitting on the floor leaning against the counter, hitting her head against the wall every few seconds. The unmistakable streaks in her face were tears. Rem's hopes for the future crumbled in one day. Her Subaru was not missing. Not to mention he may be working for the witch, and she had absolutely nothing at all to use as a lead as to where Subaru might be. Okie didn't like what he was looking at and put a stop to it. Scooping up Rem, Okie saved her from any more self-harm. Rem was light when being carried in Okie's arms, almost like a feather. Rem didn't hold back anymore. She balled into Okie's shirt sleeve, covering it in tears. For now, Rem felt she only had herself to blame. If only she had realized how good she had it with Subaru, maybe things would have turned out differently. If Subaru never left the house, would he have stayed? Would he still be here? Would he have been the one to comfort her when she was sad? Yes, he was. Rem didn't stop crying. She came to realize that the one person who gave her so much pain had also given her more happiness than she could ever ask for. But now, he was gone. Maybe forever.